I want you to imagine a map. Like, think of the kind of map you probably had hanging on the wall in your elementary school classroom.
Oh, yeah, those really bright, colorful ones?
Exactly. You know the ones where every country is a distinctly different bright color and they're separated by these thick, undeniable black lines? Now, just imagine waking up tomorrow, you look at that map, and all those thick black lines are just, they're gone.
Which is a completely wild thing to try and picture.
Right. I
You
mean, if
know,
you woke up to that map tomorrow, how would you even buy your coffee? What language would the local news be in? Who actually paves the
all
roads?
very practical questions.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating thought experiment that was initially proposed on a transcript from the Beyond Reality show.
It's a great source to dig into.
It really is. The premise is so simple, but the ripple effects are just massive.
So,
It asks, what if every country, every culture, and every language on Earth just dissolved their borders to unite into a single global nation?
it's essentially the ultimate logistical and psychological what if scenario.
Totally. And our mission for this deep dive is to figure out the actual mechanics of a borderless world. Like, is this the ultimate utopia where humanity finally thrives together, or does it just spiral into this homogenized dystopia?
Well, that's the big debate, isn't it?
Yeah. Because, okay, let's unpack this on paper. I have to admit, it sounds incredibly appealing.
Mm.
No more wars over territory, no more massive disparities in national wealth.
Right, the idealistic view.
Exactly. But as someone who has literally tried to organize a dinner out for just 6 people, I am fundamentally skeptical of the sheer logistical nightmare here.
I don't blame you.
I mean, getting 8 billion people to agree on literally anything, let alone agreeing to completely dissolve their home countries overnight, it just feels mathematically impossible.
No, your skepticism is entirely warranted there. I mean, the sheer friction of trying to align billions of competing interests is exactly why this thought experiment is so valuable for us to look at.
Because it exposes the cracks.
Exactly. To truly understand the implications here, we have to look past the initial shock of the transition. We have to examine not just what happens when those borders fall, but why the resulting friction is an absolutely inevitable part of human nature.
Yeah, you can't just wish the friction away.
Right. You can erase the lines on a piece of paper, sure, but human psychology and deeply entrenched power dynamics are, well, they're much harder to rewrite.
So true. So let's get into the actual architecture of this new world then. Because to figure out if we are looking at a utopia or a dystopia, we really have to look at the structural choices they make in this scenario.
The blueprint, essentially.
Yeah, the blueprint. And they don't just start from scratch, which honestly makes sense. They use the United Nations as the foundation for the new global government.
Which is really the only logical starting point.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating here is that if you are going to dissolve the sovereignty of nearly 200 distinct nations, you cannot just invent a new governing body out of thin air and expect immediate compliance.
People would just reject it.
Exactly. The UN, despite its real-world complexities and historical inefficiencies, it represents the only universally recognized scaffolding for global cooperation.
So they just build on top of it.
Right. It provides a pre-existing skeletal structure of international diplomacy. It comes complete with established channels for communication, so this new supernation can essentially graft itself onto it.
Okay, so they graft onto the UN, and under this brand new constitution, all nations dissolve their sovereignty. So there's no more France, no more Brazil, no more Japan.
A total reset.
A total reset. It all becomes one unified nation named Terra Nova, which means New Earth. And they establish a brand new capital city called Nova Haven.
Right, the central hub.
Yeah, and Nova Haven is envisioned as this, ultimate global melting pot. It's a place where people from every corner of the globe come together, blending cultures, traditions, and customs.
The utopian dream.
Exactly. But here's my thing. Grafting onto the UN only solves the high-level political framework. Like, how do you actually get a farmer in rural Asia and a banker in London to participate in the exact same society?
Well, the scenario introduces two massive unifying mechanics to try and force that to happen.
The money and the language, right?
Yes.
Right.
A single global currency called the Terra Nova dollar and a single official language.
Okay, those are huge.
They are. And those two mechanics are really where the theoretical dream violently collides with the reality of human behavior.
Because people don't like to change how they talk or spend.
Exactly. Let's look at the Terra Nova dollar first. Switching to a single global currency requires a staggering societal and economic shift. And that's just because of how monetary policy actually works.
Right.
You are taking wildly different economic systems, some hyper-industrialized tech hubs, others relying entirely on rural agriculture, and forcing them to share a single central bank.
I am really struggling to see how that doesn't just immediately fail.
Oh, it's incredibly volatile.
Like, if you have one central bank setting interest rates for the entire planet, someone is inevitably going to get crushed.
That is precisely the mechanism of the friction. Let's say the global central bank needs to curb inflation in a booming, highly developed sector of Terra Nova.
So they raise interest rates.
Right, they raise interest rates. Now, that might perfectly cool down the tech sector, but that exact same high interest rate suddenly makes borrowing money completely impossible for a developing agricultural region on the other side of the planet.
Oh, wow. So it just bankrupts their farmers.
Exactly. You cannot effectively apply one macroeconomic lever to a microeconomically diverse planet. One size fits all usually means one size fits nobody well.
That makes perfect sense mechanically. And, if the money is complicated, the linguistic shift is the truly radical proposition here, I think.
The single official language.
Yeah. The scenario details the creation of this language, which is a unique blend of the world's most spoken languages. And let me throw a visual analogy at you, because I was thinking about how this actually plays out in reality.
I'd love to hear it.
So imagine you have a painter's palette, and you squeeze out a little bit of every single beautiful, distinct color you own. You've got cerulean blue, cadmium red, bright yellow.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. If you mix just two of them, you might get a beautiful new color. But if you mix every single color together all at once, you don't get a vibrant new shade.
No, you definitely don't.
It eventually just turns into this dull, muddy brown. So does blending all these languages just create a muddy brown culture?
I really like that analogy. And, to take your paint analogy a step further, the resistance you would see wouldn't just be people upset about the new muddy color.
What would it be?
They would be terrified because the global government essentially threw away all the original tubes of paint. There is no going back.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Language is not just a utilitarian tool for asking where the bathroom is, right? It is the fundamental vehicle for culture. It dictates how we categorize the world, how we express emotion, and how we tell our historical narratives.
Okay, but let me challenge that for a second, though.
Sure.
Isn't language always evolving anyway? I mean, English is basically just three different languages stacked on top of each other in a trench coat.
That's a fair point.
It's this messy blend of Germanic roots, Latin, French, and we function just fine. Why would the Terra Nova blend be any different than that?
The key difference there is organic evolution versus a top-down corporate mandate.
Forced versus natural.
Exactly. English evolved over centuries of organic cultural collision. When you force a blended language from the top down, you actively strip away linguistic relativity.
Linguistic relativity.
Yeah, it's the idea that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition. Think about cultures that navigate the world not by left and right, but by cardinal directions like north and south.
Oh, right, like the Gugu Yimithir people in Australia.
Spot on. Their language inherently connects them to their physical geography in a way English absolutely does not.
That's fascinating.
So if Terra Nova flattens all communication into a blended corporate tongue just for the sake of efficiency, they lose those unique cognitive frameworks entirely. You sever the deepest roots of human identity.
Which perfectly sets up why the transition from the theoretical blueprint of Terra Nova to the boots-on-the-ground reality is so incredibly volatile.
The honeymoon phase ends quickly.
Very quickly. Once those geographical borders are erased, blending these diverse economic and cultural backgrounds creates immediate, intense ideological friction.
And the scenario really highlights this conflict well.
It does. It boils this down to a massive fight over autonomy versus centralization. And it illustrates this by introducing us to two opposing viewpoints in the source text, Maya and Marcus.
Maya and Marcus. They serve as excellent avatars for the two inevitable poles of this new society. They really represent historical political philosophies we've seen clash for millennia.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Maya is described as a young Terra Novan who is fiercely fighting for her community's right to preserve its specific cultural heritage.
She wants to keep her local roots.
Exactly. Her core argument is that losing individuality leads to a completely homogenized society, devoid of progress and creativity.
A muddy brown pate.
Yes. And then you have Marcus, who is the seasoned politician, taking the exact opposite stance. He insists that total, uncompromising unity is the absolute requirement for global prosperity and peace.
Here's looking at the macro level.
Right. He believes that allowing communities to hold on to their distinct, separate identities just plants the seeds for the exact same conflicts that destroyed the old world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can view Marcus through the lens of historical imperial consolidation. Think of Rome or the Han dynasty.
Standardize everything.
Exactly. The philosophy is that standardization, standard roads, standard currency, standard laws brings unprecedented peace and trade, even if it crushes local customs.
And Maya is the pushback against that.
Yes, Maya represents modern localization movements or even balkanization. She's arguing that human beings are fundamentally tribal and find meaning in local, specific community ties, not in some abstract concept of global citizenship.
But I have to ask, does Marcus's centralized approach actually create peace?
It's a heavy question.
Because I'm looking at his assumption, and I can't help but feel it just replaces physical borders with invisible internal ones.
How do you mean?
Well, you might not need a passport to travel from Sector A to Sector B in Terra Nova, but you will definitely feel the border when a centralized policy completely ignores the nuanced needs of your specific local community.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like you are just internalizing the conflict instead of putting it out on a battlefield.
You've hit on the core philosophical struggle of Terra Nova there. This is the ultimate manifestation of individualism versus collectivism, just scaled up to a planetary level.
The ultimate clash.
Yeah. Collectivism argues that the group, in this case, the entire human race, is the primary unit of moral concern. Individualism argues for the moral worth of the individual and their specific localized community.
So it's about priorities.
Right. And I would pose a question directly to you, the listener, right now. Think about your own life. When you join a massive organization, maybe a sprawling multinational corporation, or even just a very large homeowners association.
Ugh, homeowners associations.
Right. But think about it. How much of your unique personal identity are you actually willing to sacrifice to ensure the frictionless success of the whole?
It's the ultimate trade-off. You want the benefits of the group, but you don't want to become a faceless cog in the machine.
Exactly.
And the thought experiment reveals that this tension between individual heritage and collective unity doesn't just fade away as generations get used to Terra Nova.
No, it evolves.
Yeah, as the decades pass, this friction evolves into highly tangible global outcomes. So, what does this all mean? Let's look at the massive positive first. Terra Nova successfully becomes an unprecedented hub of innovation.
Which makes sense theoretically.
You have unfettered international collaboration leading to massive technological breakthroughs.
The mechanics behind that boom are just undeniable. Imagine taking the brightest minds from formerly rival nations and putting them in the exact same laboratories without any geopolitical red tape or intellectual property hoarding.
Just pure scientific pursuit.
Right. But even more critically, think about the capital. Without global superpowers spending trillions of dollars annually on defense budgets, aircraft carriers, and nuclear arsenals.
Oh, wow. All that money is freed up.
Exactly. That capital could be entirely redirected into research and development, green infrastructure, and healthcare. The compounding effect of shared global knowledge would trigger an immediate exponential leap in scientific advancement.
It sounds like the ultimate golden age. But, as we know, every golden age has a cost. And here it is, the cost of unity.
The backlash.
Yeah, this massive push for a unified, streamlined global culture sparks an organized backlash. We see the rise of a faction called the preservationists.
Which is such a telling name.
It really is. They are a vocal group demanding the actual restoration of national sovereignty. They argue that the resulting homogenized culture of Terra Nova is literally suffocating human diversity.
They want the borders back.
They do. The global government becomes locked in this endless struggle to balance planetary unity with the desperate human desire for cultural preservation.
The preservationists are essentially looking at the societal canvas,
Yeah.
realizing that while the infrastructure is highly efficient, all the vibrant colors are gone.
And this brings up a really fascinating paradox. On one hand, Terra Nova's international collaboration creates this undeniable hub of massive scientific innovation.
Right.
But on the other hand, the preservationists claim the homogenized culture is suffocating creativity. So who is right? It makes me think of a highly trained orchestra.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Imagine an orchestra where every single musician is a technical virtuoso and they all play the exact same instrument perfectly. They are flawlessly unified. But because they only have one instrument and one unified style, they can only ever play one song. It's played perfectly, but it never ever changes.
This raises an important question, and that is a brilliant way to conceptualize the paradox. It gets right to the heart of how we define progress.
Because perfection isn't always progress.
Exactly. The synthesis here lies in understanding the difference between short-term efficiency and long-term innovation. Initially, Marcus's vision of unity sparks rapid breakthroughs.
Because of the shared resources.
Right. You remove the barriers, you share the data, you fund the labs, and you get an immediate boom in output. But long-term homogenization, which Maya fears, might ultimately dry up the diverse perspectives required to think outside the box.
Because if everyone is educated the exact same way, speaking the exact same blended language, and following the exact same cultural norms, you eventually run out of new ideas.
You lose the edge.
Yeah, everyone approaches a problem from the exact same angle.
Precisely. True innovation is rarely comfortable. It actually requires friction, requires disagreement.
You need someone to rock the boat.
You do. It requires someone looking at a structural problem from an entirely different cultural or philosophical framework and saying, you are all approaching this backward. Let's try it this way.
And if you don't have that,
If Terra Nova actively smooths out all the edges of human culture to prevent geopolitical conflict, they might inadvertently smooth out the exact friction needed to generate new, world-changing ideas. It challenges us to consider if a perfectly frictionless society can actually be an innovative one over a timeline of centuries.
a frictionless society might just slide to a halt.
Exactly.
Well, as we look at the grand arc of this thought experiment, from the incredibly optimistic, shiny founding of Nova Haven with its new currency and global language, to the complex, messy reality of the preservationists demanding their borders back, the scenario concludes by describing Terra Nova as an imperfect beacon of hope.
Which is probably the most realistic outcome.
Yeah, it is far from a settled utopia.
It proves that the journey to harmony is continuous. You don't just erase the lines on a map, declare world peace, and walk away.
It's an ongoing process.
The delicate balancing act we see in Terra Nova between wanting to belong to a massive unified whole and desperately wanting to preserve our unique individual heritage is the defining human challenge. We navigate that tension right now, every day, in our neighborhoods, our workplaces, and our digital communities.
We really do. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering thought to mull over on your own.
I love these.
It builds on everything we've talked about regarding human psychology. If Terra Nova actually succeeded, if they truly unified the entire planet into one single cohesive entity, who or what becomes the other?
The ultimate sociological question.
Because throughout all of human history, nations and tribes have largely defined their shared identities by contrasting themselves against their neighbors.
You need an out-group to have an in-group.
Exactly. You know who you are by looking across the river at who you are not. So if there are literally no external nations left to compare themselves to, if there is no other across a border, how does a global society measure its own progress?
That's a profound thought.
How do they maintain their internal unity over the centuries without an external friction or a perceived rival to bind them together? It's definitely something to think about the next time you look at a globe and see all those thick, colorful lines. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you. Keep looking for those invisible borders in your own life, and we will catch you next time.